Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
Trocon sent me a story, and the more you hear about it, the more facts you hear, the crazier it gets. It's maddening. From indepthnh.org, and NH in this context means New Hampshire. From indepthnh.org, Damian Fisher wrote the story. Maine woman illegally searched gets $200,000 after a New Hampshire State Police arrest. And you're thinking to yourself, wait, Steve, the police arrested somebody and they searched them. For that, she gets $200,000. Why? Were there really crazy facts to this story? Yes, there were. Trust me, she deserves the money. The woman spent nearly 2 weeks in jail, during which time she was subjected to illegal body searches, including an invasive cavity exam. And that, my friends, is not what the dentist is looking for. We're talking about the other kind of cavity exam. So because a New Hampshire State Police trooper fabricated the crime underneath all of this, according to her federal civil rights lawsuit, they settled and she got the money. So she settled with the state of New Hampshire for more than $200,000. Her attorney did not respond to a request for comment, but according to a settlement agreement that somebody got through a FOIA request, she's getting $212,500 from the state of New Hampshire to settle this lawsuit. Meanwhile, the director of claims with the insurance carrier that was involved here said that the county also settled with her for $25,000. So there's a bunch of numbers jumping around here, but it's more than $200,000. The trooper who initiated the stop is on the list recently released by the state of police officers who left their jobs under questionable circumstances. He was discharged from the New Hampshire State Police in August after 13 years in law enforcement. His discharge was reported to the Standards and Training Council of the police as problematic, although it's unclear exactly why they said that. Now, you'd think a police officer with 13 years of experience would know how to do his job. Well, we'll get there. Meanwhile, his name does not appear on the Lori list released this week by the Attorney General's office. About 90 of the 281 names on the secret list of dishonest officers were released, with more expected in 3 months if those officers don't file the lawsuits necessary in Superior Court to try to get their names removed, as they're allowed to try to do under state law. The Lori list, or the exculpatory evidence schedule, catalogs police officers with credibility problems. So here's the question. The man was a state trooper for 13 years. He now sells real estate. A lawsuit was filed, and a woman received over $200,000. What happened here? I know you're asking. So as part of the settlement, the state and the trooper deny any wrongdoing. And the victim here is 46 years old now, but she was stopped in February of 2017 on I-95 by that trooper, the trooper in question. When I refer to the trooper, that's who I'm referring to. The pretext of the stop was that there was snow covering or obscuring the tail lights on her car. So in February of 2017, the woman's driving down the road, and a trooper pulls her over and says, I pulled you over because there is snow obscuring your taillights. Might not have used the word obscuring, but it's the concept. He then illegally searched her handbag during the stop and claimed he found drug residue, according to the lawsuit. At this time, another trooper arrived to back up the first trooper. The first trooper called the Franklin County, Maine Sheriff's Department to check for warrants on the woman, as she is from Avon, Maine. She's from Avon, Maine. It's a very small town, that Avon, Maine. Population 461, according to the last census. Just guessing. During the conversation with an unnamed dispatcher, the trooper said that he heard from this person that an unknown woman from Avon, Maine had recently been found to be hiding drugs in her body. That is in reference to the cavity search issue. So the trooper calls and says, are there any outstanding warrants for this particular woman? He's told no, but there was a woman from our town who is notorious for doing this. This sounds like a story that like a fourth grader would come home from school with. and go, guess what Timmy told me? Timmy told me that Bobby's brother, blah, 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 blah. Next thing you know, you're like, this isn't true. What do you mean? What's this got to do with the question I just asked you? Does she have any outstanding warrants? That's a yes or no, right? That's what I like to call a binary proposition. It's yes or it's no. Now you might say, Steve, maybe they don't know. Maybe there is a third option. Presumably he's calling them because they would know. So they said, no outstanding warrants for her, but there is a woman from town. Don't know who she is, but that's the story going round. There's a story going round about a woman in town who likes to hide contraband within herself. So the lawsuit states that whoever answered the phone had not heard of this woman, but told defendants, the two officers, that Avon is a small town, and 6 months ago, in an unrelated case, they'd pulled over a woman who had pills hidden in her body. This fact, which is unrelated to the stop in question, because remember the woman was stopped because she had snow covering her taillights, was enough for the two troopers to bring enhanced charges against the woman. On this information and this information alone, the defendants suspected was either the same woman from Avon, Maine, who hid pills. I'm trying to keep this clean because this is a family show. She hid pills or had done the same thing as the other woman. Of course, the woman here denied hiding any drugs on her person, the lawsuit states. She was then taken to the County House of Corrections, where she was given a full body scan from the jail's X-ray scanner. So they start irradiating her. They start scanning her. They start X-raying her. That scan found no drugs, but an unnamed jail staffer claimed to have seen some abnormalities in her abdomen. And that was used to continue to hold her in jail until she passed the drugs out of her system. And yes, this is all so intrusive and gross that if this happened to you, you probably wouldn't settle for $200,000. This case, to me, seems like it's worth more than that. But they held her and they checked what she passed to make sure she wasn't passing the contraband that they thought she was hiding inside of herself, which caused the abnormalities in the X-rays they made of her. She's kept at the Rockingham County House of Corrections for 5 days, and no drugs were ever passed, according to the lawsuit. No drugs were ever found. They were shut out. They got nothing. She was initially charged with possession of a controlled substance and transporting drugs, and her bail was set at $250. But according to the lawsuit, the first trooper brought an enhanced charge of delivery of articles prohibited for the phantom drugs inside her body, and bail was then set at $5,000. So, according to the lawsuit, the defendants fabricated evidence of additional drug offenses. This fabricated evidence was conveyed to the prosecutor. Prosecutor then used that evidence to convince the judge to raise the bail, and the judge ordered another body scan. Keep X-raying her. Eventually you'll find something. The woman was brought to the Valley Street Jail in Manchester, where she was given drug tests against her will. The tests came back negative for drugs. Isn't that weird? Well, of course, the drugs won't show in your system if they're hidden in there in a different way. At this point, she passed a drug test and a body scan, and they spun her around and threw her back in jail. See, it's something wrong here. These X-rays are eventually going to show drugs. We just have to keep X-raying her. Despite her negative drug test results, she was forced to wait a 6th day at Valley Street Jail for something to pass. And yes, they're checking. If you've ever thought about being in jail, I know that most of the people in my audience have never been in jail, especially not for any length of time. Most of you. If you ever look at a jail cell, there's not a lot of privacy there. And so there's often, fixtures right there. Whereas in your house, those fixtures might be in their own room, right? You have a bathroom in your house. In jail, they don't do that. They don't give you the privacy of your own bathroom. They'll often have just a fixture right there. Anybody walking by can look in and see it. Anybody walking by can look in and see who's on it. And they can have someone sit there and watch and wait until you pass something so they can check to see what it was. There is very little that I can think of that'd be more humiliating than what this woman went through. So they brought her back to the Rockingham County Jail, where she was held because she could not afford the $5,000 bail. And don't forget, the $5,000 bail was based on the fabricated charge from the two troopers. She stayed there for another 7 days, and in those 7 days, no drugs ever came out of her body. And trust me, they were looking. Because you understand, the longer this goes on, the more scared the cops are getting. Because they're going, what if we're wrong here? I mean, they actually do think that. On some level, they must. Finally, on February 21st, after almost 2 weeks of no drugs passing, prosecutors dropped the delivery of articles prohibited charge, and they reduced her bail down to $250. She was still not free to go, though, because the judge ordered another body scan. So in case this woman hasn't been x-rayed enough, they're going to x-ray her again. White was brought back to Stafford County House of Corrections, where she was again scanned, and an abnormality was again found, according to the lawsuit. An abnormality was found. At this point, the New Hampshire State Police trooper arrived and told her she was staying in jail while police obtained a warrant for cavity searches of her body. They're going to go get a court order, and they were going to go in and look. So this is despite the fact that if there was anything in there, it would have been in there now for 2 weeks. The warrant was based on evidence fabricated by the two troopers. They told her she could either wait for the warrant, which would take considerable time, or consent to the invasive search without a warrant. So now here's the question. If you're in that situation and they tell you we're going to get the warrant, and you've already seen all the other crazy stuff they've done, would you say go get the warrant? So she agreed to go to the hospital 13 days after her arrest based on snow covering her taillights. She was given the invasive exams, and that's plural because they looked in 2 different places. And guess what they found? No drugs. At 7:14 p.m. on February 23rd, she was released from police custody on what amounted to a simple possession charge, according to the lawsuit. And again, that's based on the fact they claimed they found some kind of residue in her purse. On a simple possession charge, she would have been released on bail on the first day, according to her lawsuit. On September 29 of 2017, just so you don't think this is ending and it hasn't gotten any crazier, they sent her a bill for the exam. She got a bill from the hospital that said, we examined you. We looked in there and we looked in there, and here, pay us for that. Now, the hospital was initially named as a defendant in the lawsuit, but they said that she agreed to dismiss the hospital from the case as they were not involved in the legal questions here or the illegal detention of her. They were voluntarily dismissed from the case at the plaintiff's request, and no payment was made. This occurred very early in the case, and we have not been associated with any related further actions, they said. But the question is, no payment was made by them. Did they still require her to pay them for the exams? This is crazy. So meanwhile, the second trooper is still employed as a state trooper. The first trooper, again, I've mentioned, is out selling real estate. It is not clear if either of them were brought before the Police Standards and Training Council for discipline in relation to the woman's arrest. The second trooper did not respond to a request for comment sent to his work email. So the only thing I really need to clarify is early in the story, it says that they used an X-ray scanner, Later in the story, they mentioned being scanned again and again and again. I don't know for a fact that all of those scans were X-rays. Only one is identified as such, and I realize now that it's possible they were scanning her using some other kind of scanning technology. There's all kinds of modern marvels of medicine that they've got where they can scan your body using other stuff. But the point is that the police pulled her over for a equipment issue on her car. They searched her purse as part of that, because maybe there's evidence in the purse to explain why there's snow on her taillights. So who knows where the snow comes from? Like what, it just falls from the sky? So they searched her purse, claimed they found drug residue, arrested her for that, and then upon hearing that the people of Avon, Maine have heard of a woman who hides drugs inside of her, They decided that she must be that woman, and then they subjected her to these humiliating actions along the way. And so she was x-rayed or scanned repeatedly. She had presumably people with a medical background digging around inside of her looking for stuff. And then they were watching everything she passed for a couple weeks to see if there was drugs in there. Turns out there weren't. And it all goes back to she stopped for the taillights, searched the purse, made the phone call, and jumped to this crazy conclusion. So you might wonder, is there possibly more going on here? Like, did she give the cops a hard time? Was the cop having a bad night? Who knows? But it started with the one cop who is no longer a police officer. And I know that some people say that, hey, cop gets fired over here, he pops up over here. That happens sometimes. It does happen. But quite often, if there's an adjudication, like an actual charge being brought and somebody gets jailed, for instance, those cops have a harder time getting rehired because it comes out in their background checks, assuming they do one. Oh, by the way, this guy actually spent time in jail. He's got to admit to that. And I suspect when a police officer costs the organization $200,000 because of some stupidity like this, I know what you're thinking. You're going to say, Steve, cops do stupid stuff like this all the time. They don't always get caught. But I hope that somewhere down the road, if there's some department looking at hiring this guy and go, well, this is the guy who went off on this wild goose chase that cost that other town and other municipality $200,000. Maybe we shouldn't hire him. But as of right now, the newspaper reports he's selling real estate, which is probably more his speed. You know what I'm saying? So crazy story, but Trocon, thanks for sending it. And I'm glad you spotted it in the indepthnh.org website from New Hampshire, indepthnh.org. Damian Fisher wrote it. Crazy story. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. A friend keeps telling me, cheer up, it could be worse. You could be stuck underground in a hole full of water. I know she means well.